So, I am spoiled today because I'm getting another food heist. We just recorded
You are.
the episode that presumably played last week. Now, food heist again.
Food heist again, and this one, once again, is eggs.
Oh.
I think we might be seeing a lot of egg food heists.
Are back.
It might be.
Oh,
this feels more like a copycat to me.
Let's hear it.
So this days after, about a week after, the Pennsylvania got hit by the egg ninjas, somebody in Seattle stole 540 eggs and a bunch of breakfast meat, like sausages and bacon, from a walk-in refrigerator in a Seattle restaurant. Went in about 3 a.m. They took the time. It was two guys, according to the camera footage. They took the precaution of hitting it when there was a snowstorm, knowing it would delay police response. So at least that is wise. But it's like the camera shows them running back and forth between this walk-in refrigerator and their truck, just moving the eggs by hand. I assume, cartons at a time rather than one or two eggs at a time. Yeah, so it's much smaller scale. It's not the incredibly calculated and professional heist of 9 pallets of eggs. Plus the fact that they also took some liquid eggs and some bacon and stuff.
So I know what this is, Dan.
What is this?
We were theorizing last week that the egg ninjas have, they stole us and they had places that they were distributing them. These are people who are reneged on their deal with the egg ninjas. They bought some but didn't pay them, so they needed to get their eggs confiscated and extra to send a message. So that's why they took the breakfast sausages. So they sent a couple of the ninjas in. That's why they're only stealing 500 eggs. Like, you got some of our special eggs, then you reneged, and now we have to re-egg your eggs.
You have to re-egg the eggs.
Yeah.
I like that. This is the egg ninjas sending a message.
Yeah. We're taking back even the liquid eggs that you made from our eggs, because you don't cross the egg ninjas, otherwise they steal your bacon.
Yeah. Bacon, sausage, and liquid egg product.
Should have known better. Don't double cross the egg ninjas.
Yeah. So there we go. I dig it. Not copycats at all, but a vicious criminal vengeance.
And that was not entirely just a reason for me to say reneged.
It was probably mostly that, though.
Mostly that.
Okay.
So Donald pitched this episode to us. He wants us to discuss which common apocalypses in narrative we think could actually happen, which are realistic, and gauge them on a realism scale of whether we think they could actually happen and how close we are to them. And he said non-religious apocalypse.
Yes.
So the word apocalypse being an actual religious term, ironically, is not allowed in our discussion of apocalypse.
So this is religion aside. This is not, do we think the rapture is coming?
Yes.
This is, do we think there's going to be a meteor hit the earth? Are we all going to go?
Zombies.
Are we going to go out the Fallout way, or the Walking Dead way, or something else?
Apocalypse has to be Latin, right?
That's what I was looking up.
So the plural would be apocalypsi.
Apocalypsi,
not apocalypses, because octopus is Greek, and the actual
which would be octopode.
Or octopuses, which are both, but not octopi. But you can use octopi because people understand it. But anyway, so we just, what's the first one you want to talk about?
Well, I kind of want to talk about how apocalypode sounds way better than apocalypsi.
It does, but it's not correct.
Apocalypodes? So let's talk about Terminator first.
Okay.
Robot Uprising.
Robot Uprising. How likely are we including in this? You get to be our judge, Donald.
Okay.
Is Grey Goo part of this? Do you know what Grey Goo is?
Grey Goo is nanotech.
Okay.
So separate.
I think
Grey Goose
that's
separate.
a separate one.
Okay. So how likely is it that we will invent robots or AI that will eventually destroy us?
I think AI is the good
Yeah.
baseline.
Yeah.
So-
Invent AI that will destroy us, whether that is
Yeah.
Terminator or Matrix or something else.
I guess question number 1, could it happen? I think yes.
I think it could.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
How close to it are we?
What's interesting to me, because I've actually done a lot of research on this, and last year gave a guest of honor speech all about AI. What's interesting to me is that a lot of the people who know what they're talking about are warning us a lot more urgently than we want to pay attention to.
Yeah. 10 years ago, the experts said, we don't have actual AI. We're not even close. Now they're saying, we might be losing control of this. We don't have actual AI yet. We only have large learning models. But at some point, that becomes indistinguishable from AI. So,
well, and I think you also have to remember that if we are allowing extremely rudimentary definitions of AI,
yes,
we have had autonomous killer robots for a very long time.
Yes,
that is essentially what a landmine is. It's a weapon, and it has a very limited decision-making process, which is, did you step on me? Then I will kill you.
Yeah.
But there are still millions of them buried in parts of Southeast Asia that continue to be a threat today.
Yeah.
We have already seen rudimentary AI apocalypses in small, contained places.
Yeah, I don't think this can be counted as that if they can't self-replicate.
I was going to say, I think looking up the minimum requirements to call something AI is that it has to be able to, like, run a simple algorithm.
No,
typically.
I don't. Yeah, I'd agree with you. But
you can absolutely argue
he
my
said
definitions.
Robots, not AI, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
But for it to be the apocalypse, I think there's this stage of it has to be active.
Sentient?
Not
has
doesn't
to
have to
be
sentient.
reproducible.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess it has
Is
to
that
be
what we're going to say?
sentient. Yes, it doesn't have to be sapient. Like, for instance, you
Okay.
could imagine installing Chat GPT, a future model of it, on one of these robots that's out. And it's like you're sent out to go to war, and it following the large language model of asking itself what would lead to a robot doing a better job. It would do this, and they don't make decisions, but they can replicate making decisions. And I don't understand it, but you could write one that follows a list of commands, but we are not to the place where it can therefore actively do things. But anyway, I think there's a leap in there somewhere that I feel like aren't even close to yet.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of it depends on what we give AI control over. What kind of decisions are we allowing AI to make?
And right now, I don't think it can make decisions, right? Like, it can follow instructions, and those can replicate decisions. But like large language models, like when you ask it, what should I eat for dinner? It doesn't consider what you should eat for dinner. It picks a word and then looks online for a word that follows it up and a word that follows that up in the context. It is eerie and creepy that makes a sentence that we can understand that actually gives us relevant information.
Yeah.
And that's the part that I think people are like, this is working really well. Is there a world where you end up with the sort of that it actually can take control of something and do something? I don't know. I'm going to give this one a 3 for likelihood.
This is on a scale of 1 to 10?
1 to 10.
Okay.
Of how likely that this is to actually be able to happen with our current understanding and things.
I think I can agree with that. I'm a little more dire on it than you are.
Okay.
One of my favorite AI stories is AI gets used in recruiting a lot.
Okay.
They use AI programs to vet resumes. And one thing a year or two ago that they realized was happening at a banking firm is that every one of the rest of a majority, let's say, of the resumes that the AI was approving and saying, yes, this looks like a good candidate, were all people that played lacrosse in college. Not because that qualifies them to be a better banker, but because it most closely resembled the kinds of bankers they already had.
Exactly.
And so
there's some scary stuff here.
Yeah, there's this concept in AI called lethal indifference, that without understanding what it's doing, a robot or an AI is going to make a decision or cause you to make a decision that is uninformed, essentially.
So what are you giving it 1 to 10?
I'll give it a 4.
You give it a 4.
A little more than you, but I do agree that we're a long way off from
and I'm going to give
singularity.
A baseline here. If you told me, all right, within the next 100 years, the world is going to end non-religious, there's going to be an apocalypse. What is your 10 out of 10? This is the most likely nuclear apocalypse.
Nuclear annihilation.
Okay. Nuclear annihilation is my, how likely is that? If I knew it was happening, like 10 out of 10. That's our scale. Does that mean I'm saying right now I think 100% we're going to end? No, but if I were saying I knew we were going to end, and what's my guess? My biggest guess would be nuclear apocalypse.
Well, let's talk about that
10.
next.
So, yeah.
Nuclear apocalypse, the fallout ending to the world.
Yep.
I kind of agree with you that if I have to pick one as the most common, or the most likely, I guess is the way to phrase that.
Yeah.
And maybe this is because you and I both grew up in the Cold War.
Yeah.
But it does seem that we are increasingly leaning that direction again. Vladimir Putin, for example, has multiple times expressed his willingness to use nuclear weapons.
Yep.
In large part because he does not think that anyone will respond in kind. I don't know. That destabilization of global politics does definitely put me back into that line of thinking.
Well, and the fact that with the wrong sequence of events, the world's, I don't know how actually close we came during like Cuban Missile Crisis, or that famous one where the wrong orders were sent to the nuclear submarine and things. I don't know, but it feels like we've had several touch and go moments where if the wrong person made the wrong order, life as we know it on the planet would have ended.
Yeah.
And so
there's the very famous story of the Russian missile guy.
That's the one I'm talking about.
Is that the one?
Yeah.
Where his sensors or his messaging told him that we had launched ours.
Yeah.
And his job was to launch his.
Yep. I used
and
that
he chose not to.
Skyward. And I can't remember his name, but chose not to end the world. So good on you.
Good for that guy. But yeah, we can come up with several stories like that where we have had those near misses. I saw a really funny meme the other day where someone said, the caption said, Gen X bomb shelter, and it was one of those old metal desks that we used to have in elementary school.
Yeah, I did those drills. So that's our most likely. We both agree. What's our least likely? Can you think of one that you think is really unlikely?
The least likely.
Yes.
Least likely end of the world.
That is as portrayed commonly in film and television.
Ooh.
Is it zombie apocalypse?
It might be zombie apocalypse. I have read a handful, for example, Feed by Myra Grant. Very compelling, trying to have as good a science as possible explanation for why these zombies are real instead of just horror monsters.
Yeah.
But even so, I think they're mostly just horror monsters.
Yeah, Last of Us tries the same sort of thing. Zombie fungus that controls the ants, jumps to humans, and it's fun, right? But number one, I think the science of it you can't make it work.
Yeah.
And this is from a fantasy author who enjoys trying to make science work. And number two, the way that they're presented, I don't see society collapsing. Like, I've always thought if there were like traditional Romero zombies, they would just not be a problem.
Mm-hmm.
I know Scar. I know Larry Correa. I know how they would deal with a zombie apocalypse, and it would not involve society collapsing. It would involve a great deal of fun on their part. In fact, I've often said to some of my, my gun nut friends, I'm like, you should write a book series about a realistic zombie apocalypse that's just kind of happening in the background because it's really just not that threatening. But I think that's a 1. If there's a 0, though, it's Reign of Fire.
The dragons.
Dragons cause an apocalypse for some reason. Dragons are found. They are, for some reason, immune to 50 caliber bullets.
Yeah, well, they've got thick scales.
50 cals. They can shoot through concrete walls, but not through these dragon scales.
These dragon scales
of dragons that can fly, and they cause an apocalypse by just breathing fire on everything in the whole world, everywhere, and yeah.
If we're doing ridiculous ones, Moonfall, moon crashing into the planet.
Moon crashing into the planet.
Yep.
I mean, I feel like that's far more realistic. I mean, it would
then dragons appearing. Yeah,
it would
probably
require some probably extrastellar body to over a long period of time. Like if you told me the apocalypse happens, it's going to take 100,000 years. I'm like, oh, something hits the moon and destabilizes it. A very large asteroid we hadn't before tracked comes in, hits it. Something like I can believe that.
Okay, well let's talk about this because there's the meteor that is predicted to hit in 2032.
Right, which is not a planet ender.
No.
We've been hit by meteors of this size multiple times, but slightly larger.
Slightly larger.
Yeah.
They were predicting it. They had gotten as high as a 3.1% chance of it hitting Earth.
Yeah.
And then downgraded it to like 0.2%.
Yes. Do you know why that is? Do you understand?
I don't. I haven't read. I just have talked to my brother about it.
So what happens when they're doing these meteors is they, how can you explain it? It's like they're shining a spotlight. Imagine a spotlight on a wall, and the meteor is a dot on that. And they're narrowing the spotlight as they get more and more data. And so as they narrow the spotlight, the amount of the space, which is the statistical probability that the meteor takes up, is larger and larger. It's not that it got more likely, it's that they've eliminated more chances that it won't hit.
Okay.
And then once they get to a certain part, it just cuts it off completely, meaning it's outside of the realm of possibility and then it's gone. Someone could explain that better, but it's not like it was 3%, we had it tracked. It's more like we're doing all the data and we're eliminating this and this and this and this where it could land. So that means it has that much more chance statistically that it'll hit us. But once they eliminate it, it's basically gone and there's no chance.
Which makes sense.
Yeah.
At the time that they did that, they did give it a 1% chance that it hits the moon. And again, it's not large enough to destabilize lunar orbit.
Yeah.
But I find that interesting.
Yeah.
That I would say is, I'm not going to put it below dragons and zombies, but I still feel like that's an extremely unlikely end of the world because we kind of know in advance where these things are and how big they are.
Yeah, but we can't we can't send Bruce Willis to blow it in half because we just don't have Bruce Willis to do that anymore.
Yeah.
So once we lost Bruce Willis, it became a much more
apocalyptic scenario.
Yes, no longer having access to Bruce Willis is very, very dangerous to us. I mean, thank goodness
we still have Ben Affleck, he was vital to the process.
He was very vital to the process. That you went a different place. I was going with the hello fellow kids guy. What's his name?
Steve Buscemi.
We still have Steve Buscemi.
Yeah. So, he, if anything, made it worse.
Yeah, but realistically, we won't talk about the physics. That wouldn't do anything. Blowing it up with a nuke and blowing it in half. But you can paint one white, I believe, is one of the big theories of how to stop an asteroid that they think is going to impact us. Because if you can get it soon enough paint it white, the solar wind and the light will actually shift it over time out of our orbit.
Propel it.
But I think this one's one of the more likely.
Really?
Yeah. I think it's more likely than AI currently because we know it's happened before.
Mm-hmm.
That's fact true. That the Earth has suffered at least one of these in the past. Civilization-ending apocalypse. There wasn't civilization, but says to me that this has to go above the fold. It has to be like a 6. Because
I put it low just because of the work that people are doing to track these things.
Yeah, but
and if there was
able to stop one,
we might not be able to stop one. But is there one out there? And
I think
how far in the future can we find and predict these things? I guess is the question, isn't it?
The fact, again, I feel like it has to be one of the most likely because we know it's happened. Most of these, in fact, all of these haven't happened before. This one has. Therefore, that's my argument. That's why I'm giving it a 6.
I certainly can't argue with that. I'm happy to give it a 6.
But you could argue it's a 2 because we've mapped, and I don't know if we have, the astronomers, like your argument of we've mapped all the ones that could end us and they aren't going to hit in the next 100 years. So therefore our philosophy for this thought experiment, is negated.
Yeah. But it is, of all of the different options, it's the one that we do have the ability to see coming a long time before it hits, which might not save us, but at least there's nothing in our immediate future that's going to do it.
All right, climate change, more likely.
Oh, the depressing one.
The depressing one.
Oh, gosh.
We now know that overpopulation as apocalypse is very unlikely, despite the 60s and 70s using that one as the apocalyptic sort of thing through a ton of science fiction stories. We know just human nature, we are unlikely to suffer that one. We know that, I would guess that a plague is very unlikely to apocalypse. Like, we've had that one too, and we survived it.
That's where I actually have to disagree. If you want to talk about 10s, I think biobomb or bio somethings are scariest one.
Biobomb might be different from just normal plague.
Normal plague, that's fair.
Society survived an extremely aggressive, destructive plague that killed more people than any other plague, and we didn't have any tools to fight it.
Fair.
And we survived it. Therefore, by kind of looking the same argument of asteroids, which would have ended us and did end a bunch of species, we have to say, I don't think this one is likely to end us.
That's fair. I guess I should say genetically engineered.
Genetically engineered.
That's the one where I'm like, I think we have hit a state or very close to hitting a state that we can very easily genetically engineer a virus or a plague or something that's just scary enough that it can easily take out human race.
I don't think I'm going to disagree with you.
That's fine.
I think that they could, but I think we would have counterplay to it. To the reason nuclear apocalypse is such is there's no counterplay. Those bombs are launched.
Right.
Someone releases one of these. We didn't handle COVID that well. but we
still got through it.
We still got through it, and it had something more aggressive and more dangerous. It still has to follow like plague vector patterns. It's the same. We will have some warning. I think it's. Don't get me wrong. I think there's a reasonable chance. Like, I might put it like at a 6 or a 7, but I don't think it's a 9 or a 10.
Okay, that's fair.
Well, and it depends very much on our response to it.
Yep.
True.
Because you look at things like, the first big climate crisis we had was the ozone layer, which people took seriously and did what they could, and now it's not a problem anymore because we fixed it and it went away.
Now, climate change I would give higher than the bioplague.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
I think fair. So too.
Yeah.
I think that climate change does have the possibility of causing a lot of problems. It's one I wish we could ignore and it would go away, and I don't think that's true. It's also the most politicized apocalypse of any that we've talked about.
It is. And I have full confidence. So maybe not higher than. I have full confidence that we, as a species, will deal with it. I think the dangers are slow and incremental, and that we will find ways once it becomes market or governmentally, like once the incentives are there, I think damage will be done, but we will overcome it.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
It might not be fun to overcome it.
It might not be fun, but at the same time, I don't want to be I definitely don't want to be a denier at all. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Totally believe in it. But we have statistically had trouble pinpointing what the timeline is.
Yeah.
Same as like the apocalypse of overpopulation. We have trouble with this, and I understand why we try to pinpoint it, because you need those alarms, but at the same time, I think we are going to do a better job of this than the worst case scenarios.
Yeah.
So that's what my philosophy is.
And a lot of these climate models point to a tipping point.
Yeah.
At, kind of the climate singularity that once we go past that, there's no coming back. And I would like to believe, and this is maybe getting back into religious territory, because this is more based on wanting to believe than any actual science that I have personally studied. I'm kind of with you that there might not be a tipping point so much as increasingly bad things happening that we will eventually not be able to ignore and will force a response.
That's kind of where I think that we will be. But let's get to the fun one.
The fun one?
Alien invasion.
Alien invasion. The Fermi paradox.
Day.
Okay. I mean, do I think it's likely?
Yep. What's your number?
Personally?
Give me a number.
Give you a number?
Mm-hmm.
Boy. Are we using this 100 years?
Yeah. Sure.
Oh, then it's like a 2.
Okay, that's what I was going to give it. That's what I was going to give it to.
Yeah. I personally believe that there is life out there.
Yeah, I do too.
I don't question that for a second. And I think there is some credence to some of the models that say, given the span of time and the age of civilization, when two civilizations meet, one will annihilate the other without exception. I think that there's some interesting truth behind that.
Okay.
But I don't know if it's true.
I would say that as if there is a way to get from star system to star system, the resources involved in doing so, by our understanding of physics as it stands now, are so high that nothing at that world could be of worth compared to the resources to get there.
Yeah.
So all of these alien invasion stories of they go to the planet, they take all its resources, they move on, or we go and I feel like just don't make any sense. Because if you are going to other planets, you have to, as a species, you have to be going there for the same reason we went to the moon. And I think that changes the calculus.
Yeah.
And as far as we know, in our understanding of physics, there's just no way to do it. Generation ships, but like the closest stars don't look like they're inhabited. And so you're talking generation ships traveling for thousands of years.
Knows how long, yeah.
And so and even if there is a way to get around it, which I hope there is, I sincerely hope there is, I think it's just going to cost so much energy that it's just like, you have to do it because it's fun. It's fun to explore the universe, not because there's any resources or anything that you want.
You have to do it because you want to say hi to your neighbors.
Exactly.
Because there's no other excuse for that expenditure of resources.
There's just no reason why Zod has to come to Earth and terraform it to be, Krypton, because Mars is out there and equally easy to terraform with your terraforming bomb. And beyond that, you have to pass thousands of planets to get to the one that has some people on it to exterminate, to live. It just doesn't make any sense. So.
Yeah. Doesn't make a ton of sense. And I have more faith in human nature, I think, than a lot of doomsaying science fiction does.
Yeah.
And you look at us, and as problematic as we are, we still, I think, would be nice to aliens we encountered. I believe that. I genuinely do.
I do as well.
And I tend to believe that, you know, other species are going to feel the same way. Because I don't think that we are paragons of virtue on the galactic scene.
Yes.
And yet we're still going to be nice.
I wrote a whole series about how, you know, the whole joke is we always encounter aliens and they try to destroy us. And I wrote a book series about, no, what if we are the ones that they encounter and we
try to destroy them.
We are the dangerous thing unleashed upon the universe. It's not the Borg, it's the humans. And so, yeah, two on that one from me. Are there any we missed, Donald?
Solar flare.
Solar flare?
Solar flare.
Yeah, the sun.
Boring. Vetoed.
Vetoed. Okay.
It's a
we
thing
did pass
that could
Grey Goo.
happen.
What's that? Grey goo.
We did pass Grey Goo.
Grey
Let's
Goo.
end with
Grey
Grey
Goo
Goo.
feels more plausible to me than an AI uprising.
I agree.
The von Neumann machine that is very small, and the one thing it can do is break down matter to make more of itself.
Yep.
That sounds scarily plausible.
Yeah.
Whereas Terminator-style robot uprising does not.
Yeah, so if you don't know Grey Goo, that's what it is. Nanotech is invented. It has to self-replicate in order to, you know, do its thing. It goes wrong, and it universal paper clips us all. That's a deep cut reference to a pretty fun video game. But yeah, so we have to give that one more than AI. I said AI was a 3, and you gave it a 4.
I gave it a 4, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm gonna give that one a 5.
I'm happy with a 5.
Well, there we are.
Yeah.
There's Brandon and Dan. Philosophize on the end of the world. You're welcome, Dan.